Growing up, I had dreams and aspirations, but always felt like the kid that didn't fit in. For the most part, I wasn't a bad kid, but when I made the transition into adulthood, I turned to the streets for guidance. This led to getting locked up in juvenile hall, doing time in CYA, and eventually a 120-month sentence in federal prison. I had a lot of time to think and reflect during my federal sentence, so I share with you what I learned, hoping I can positively influence someone else's life with Prison Talk.
What's up, everybody? Big Herc Prison Talk. Thank you for tuning in to another episode. And if you haven't got a chance to subscribe, please do so. Go to the website, freshoutseries.com, subscribe, send us your questions, or email us at freshoutseries@gmail.com. Had a question from one of our fans. Hey, Big Herc. I like your videos about that you're willing to helping the youth and new generations that have a better future for them instead of getting into trouble and going to prison for their mistake from the past, and hopefully they can change themselves in the future. I have a good question for you, the broken prison system. Do you know of any inmates who are depressed and or angry at the system because they weren't allowing them to visit deathbed in the hospital or attending funeral at the cemetery of friends and family members or loved ones? What are the requirements to get permission from the prison warden to attend a funeral, visit deathbed, or loved ones? Does the prison system feel that inmates are lying about it because they think they'll escape from prison again? Peace and luck, Chris. Good question. It all kind of depends on what facility you're at and how much time you have and what the warden decides to do. The warden's a shot caller when it comes to dictating whether or not you'll be able to go visit somebody at their funeral or whether or not you'll be able to go visit somebody on their deathbed, because they've got to foot the bill for the marshals. They got to provide security, transportation, housing, all that stuff. So it all kind of depends. I mean, when I was down, I think I maybe ran across one person who was actually allowed to go to their family's funeral. And this gentleman in particular, he had just got out from doing 10 years in the feds for a drug charge. Got out and basically, I think he was out maybe a couple years and caught another drug case and was looking at a fresh 12 to 15. And he said that when he went for sentencing, and actually he hadn't been sentenced yet. I think he went for sentencing. No, he had been sentenced. He had been sentenced, and he had a relative of his write a letter to the judge, and the relative was a Mason. And he said they wrote a letter to the judge, and as a result, even though he was sentenced, he hadn't been designated, they allowed him 72 hours to go and visit the relative as far as for the funeral. And, he couldn't really believe it because he was locked up. He wasn't free when he was fighting his case. He was locked up, and they gave him 72 hours. He was able to go visit and had to be back to turn himself in to go do the 12 years. And that's a very rare thing I've seen in the system. And I don't know if it was because of the way the letter was written, because like I said, people have had family members write letters, but, being that the letter came from somebody who was a Mason, maybe that made a difference. But I know this guy, I actually talked to him and he was able to go visit his family. But a lot of guys, I've seen family members, I've heard of family members passing and they weren't able to go and visit them, and they were pretty much, they were screwed, man, and it was a hard pill to swallow knowing that they couldn't be there for their loved ones in their last days. And the system, they don't really have pity for that. They don't really care. It's the discretion of the warden. And a lot of times the warden doesn't want to let one guy go, because if he lets that guy go, then somebody else is going to be able to use that as reference for them to go and visit a family member. So a lot of times they just shut it all down and don't let anybody go and visit family members. If you're at a camp, you might have more luck because it's such a minimum security facility. They might not make a big thing about it, but if you're at a USP or at a medium where they have higher security, And I'm talking about the feds. I don't know about the state. State might be different. You know, they might operate a little bit differently, but I'm talking about the feds in particular. That's been my experience. So I haven't seen a lot of people be able to go and visit family members like that. You know, it's just the way they do the time. But yeah, I hope that answers your question. And you know, if you have family members that pass like that, man, you just gotta be strong, because it's I know it's hard when you can't be there, but you know, being locked up, man, that's one of the things that you have to deal with.
Lockdown's over. Get your yard time in. Exclusively at FreshOutSeries.com.